you think there is a definition of what a John Carpenter movie is, or do you feel like you've done enough different kinds of genres that it's still...
That's a really good question. I think there's probably an essential John Carpenter movie in the way that I tell a story and the kind of characters that I like to tell stories about. I've certainly made movies in my career that were done for various reasons, sometimes because I needed a paycheck.
G'day there, my name's Chris.
And I'm Nathan.
And this is CinemaBiosis, the show where we examine a film and its strange and oftentimes baffling connections to other media. And today we're talking about a film from the legendary American genre filmmaker, John Carpenter.
Oh, awesome. John Carpenter. He's one of my favorite directors.
Oh, same mate. I love me some John Carpenter.
What are we going to do, like The Thing? Prince of Darkness? Mouth of Madness?
Not quite. We're going to do Ghosts of Mars from 2001. Clearly the best John Carpenter film.
You fucking pricks.
Look, even though I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter, I actually had never seen Ghosts of Mars until watching it this morning for this review, because I'd honestly never heard anything good about it. Some people I know called it the worst film ever made, and in my head it was always closely tied with Battlefield Earth for some reason. And if you've seen Battlefield Earth, you can kind of tell why that made me a little scared to watch this one.
I do what I can.
It's a joke.
Well, I remember renting it on, like, VHS, I think, and it was like, oh, man, Ghosts of Mars, a John Carpenter film that I've missed, and rushing home to watch it, and then just being confused the whole time. I'm like, oh, this movie sucks.
But yeah, even though it's got this massive legacy of terribleness, I tried to go into it with an open mind anyway. You know, I kept reminding myself, how bad could this really be? And I guess now I know.
Well, now you've seen.
I like you already.
So the setting of our movie might be a little unsurprising if you actually think about the title. Where does our movie take place?
On Mars, the red planet.
Honestly though, I don't know if this movie really makes the most of its setting.
Yeah, well, this movie could just as easily been set in, like, the Amazon or a desert somewhere and be just as effective.
Yeah, I guess because the setting feels so tacked on, that's why we have to straight up explain the world building to the viewer. Which is why we don't get one but two forms of exposition right from the first frame of this film. We get voiceover and on-screen text over a static shot of a planet, which is like really bad B-movie territory in my opinion.
For weeks, rumors have spread across Mars, from outposts to settlements, from town to town. Something that had been buried for centuries has just been uncovered.
Whoa, dude, spoiler alert!
So on top of spoiling one of the main plot points of the film before it's even set up, we also learn our film takes place in the future on Mars.
I think they say it's mainly terraformed. Like, it's got a really weird phrasing, like 80% terraformed. I'm like, okay.
I don't know why I remember this off the top of my head, but I think they say 87% terraformed.
Outposts to settlements.
Which is just so they can have characters running around without spacesuits on, because it's an obvious afterthought. They do set up the fact that the characters have some kind of breathing equipment to help them out.
God, I hate this thing.
You'll get used to it. 2 years ago, we were still wearing full face breathers.
But then it's just kind of forgotten about. Like, people are running around later in the film without any of that stuff on.
Yeah, no.
Although I can't be 100% sure because they never even bothered to do a close-up on the breathing equipment. For the longest time, I thought maybe it had something to do with their goggles, and that's why they weren't wearing them later in the film, because they just stopped working or something.
My eyes, the goggles do nothing.
But really, it seems to be a little tiny nose piece. Regardless, I think the terraforming could have played more into the plot.
Yeah, we can't go over there. That's the, the dark zone. That's not safe there yet. Blah, blah, blah. No, none of that.
No, because that would interrupt our thrilling action scenes. But yeah, our film focuses on Lieutenant Melanie Ballard, a cop, played by Natasha Henstridge, who had made her name with a 1995 horror sci-fi film.
Species.
You created a monster, now you want us to kill it.
We decided to make it female so that it would be more docile and controllable.
More docile and controllable. I guess you guys don't get out much.
Was this her first main role outside of that, or had she done other stuff?
Nah, she'd done a few other things since Species, but I think this was supposed to be a big film for her, kind of like a career rejuvenation. And we can see how that went, eh? But our main character is found on a ghost train that's arrived in a major Martian city, and she's pulled into a meeting with a bunch of officials to explain what's happened to her.
This is a discovery hearing, and your presence is required as ranking officer. I want your after-action report.
I just don't understand why they keep referring to it as a ghost train when it's clearly a ghost model.
And the funny thing is, I've watched the making of for this film, and they're so impressed with their visual effects in this. Like, oh, it's top effects and stuff, you know, all that. I'm like, no, it's not.
No, not at all. Like, there are plenty of films with similar budgets that did better effects around the same time. Like Alex Proyas's criminally underrated Dark City from 1998. That's one of the most baffling things for me in this film. It had a $28 million budget, yet it looks like a Roger Corman movie when it comes to effects sometimes. I understand CG might have been too expensive, but maybe don't linger on the shots so much. Or, here's an idea, cut this whole section completely, because it's a framing device we don't need. Because what happens next?
Oh, then we cut to a flashback.
Last Friday at 1750, we were slamming through a dust storm on the edge of the Southern Valley.
Get ready, because this is where we're going to be for the rest of the film.
Well, not always, because let's be honest here. Sometimes that flashback cuts to another flashback.
I left Drucker's about a week ago by means of a weather balloon I'd modified.
And then returns to the previous flashback, and then is intercut with a different flashback, until you feel like you're in David Cronenberg's Scanners. This is all doubly baffling to me because the plot is literally the simplest thing ever, but it's been made more confusing by this approach. Like, it's literally our cop character needs to go to a mining outpost to pick up a notorious criminal who has been charged with murder, and this criminal has the incredibly inconspicuous name of Desolation Williams. And he's played by who? Ice Cube.
And he's terrible. Like, you're not beating around the bush here. He is awful in this movie.
How the hell that happened?
Look, to be fair to Ice Cube, almost everyone is awful in this. It's all just incredibly flat acting from the entire cast, including Jason Statham, who plays one of the cops.
The thing is, one of the better actors in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but there's only so much he can do when he's playing a character who is literally defined by spending the entire runtime of the film trying to sleazily screw their superior, which is our main character.
What you see is nothing. I have numerous hidden talents.
You're persistent, aren't you?
I've changed a few minds in my time.
You men love to exaggerate, Jericho. Just goes with the territory.
Yeah, well, in my case, it's a bit different. Perhaps a connoisseur like yourself would appreciate what I have to offer.
Stop it. Get some help.
But yeah, the cops are tasked with picking up this hardened criminal.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They keep talking about him like he's some sort of badass criminal crime lord, practically. Like, everyone knows who he is. But then he doesn't really do anything that badass.
Relax, relax. You're gonna get what you want.
I know I'm gonna get everything I want. Now let's go.
Excuse me, I think Ice Cube has some pretty badass set pieces, like, you know, awkwardly running down a ramp, shooting 2 submachine guns and looking really uncomfortable about the whole thing. That's pretty badass.
Come on, you mindless motherfuckers!
When the police arrive to pick up Desolation Williams, they find the outpost abandoned, or so they think.
Where is everybody?
Yeah, Friday night the place should be packed.
In reality, the people at the outpost have accidentally unearthed an ancient Martian structure that houses the ghosts of a former civilization, and they've started to take over the locals, and they're making them do things they wouldn't normally do.
When they get possessed, because they're possessed by I guess an alien being, they like mutilate themselves. They look really cool. Like, they've got all these rods and bars and stuff all through them.
Yeah, so they end up acting like dollar store orcs, but look like a dollar store Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. And because they're essentially ghosts, you can't just blow them away with a gun.
The ghost would go from one person to another if you killed them, or they kill themselves and take over another body.
Yeah, almost like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or Carpenter's own previous film, The Thing, which is admittedly a pretty cool idea and setup.
But then, no, it just turns into a big action scene at the end. Everyone shoots everyone with no repercussions, and they get on a train.
Yep, that's exactly right. The whole movie just turns into action fodder with no tension, because the flashback structure means we can kind of figure out what's going to happen. So there's absolutely no surprises in store.
Yeah, oh, exactly. It's not like there's no clever ending either.
I would hesitate to even say there's an ending, honestly. It literally just fizzles out, and then we get a stinger setting up further action that just feels so bored. Like everyone just gave up and did the bare minimum so they could go home.
If you ever want to come to the other side, you make a hell of a crook.
You'd make a hell of a cop.
Nah, let's just kick some ass.
It's what we do best.
You serious?
Well, what do you think about the action scenes? Do you think they're well shot? Were they punchy?
Look, Carpenter has gone on record saying this was supposed to be an old-school action film in the vein of Commando or something like that. But Carpenter has never really been an action director. He's more about meticulous pacing and suspense. And that's obvious in Ghosts of Mars because the action scenes suck.
I stopped dodging. Seriously, are you even trying to hit me?
So lifeless, they've added flashing lights to make it seem more tense.
It feels like a TV series. It feels like the A-Team.
That's so funny because I literally made a note saying it's like an A-Team episode when it comes to action. That's how toothless it feels.
Lieutenant, we've got a situation here.
Look, I think Ice Cube can be good in the right role, and he's very funny in real life, but he's just not right for that sneering badass Carpenter loves to write.
It's so meant to be Kurt Russell playing like another Snake Plissken type character, and they just couldn't get him.
Well, it's funny you say that, because you're not entirely wrong. This movie was originally meant to be a sequel to John Carpenter's Escape series, which comprises of Escape from New York and Escape from LA, featuring Kurt Russell as the character Snake Plissken. But unfortunately, Escape from LA bombed, which is honestly unsurprising.
It's an awesome film.
I love that movie, no matter what anyone says. I just appreciate its layers upon layers of cheese.
Hang on, Snake.
Gotta be kidding.
Was John Carpenter the original director?
Yep, this was always going to be a Carpenter film, and he had written the original script, which we can only assume was called Escape from Mars. But when the studio wanted this to be a standalone feature, he changed Snake Plissken to Desolation Williams.
Such a dumb name.
And a lot of the original actors he wanted ended up falling through at the last minute, which might explain the bad acting throughout the film. But the most notorious is perhaps Jason Statham, who was meant to play Desolation Williams, but that didn't work out, obviously.
So why didn't he? He's in the film.
Well, apparently Jason Statham wasn't a box office draw. You know, that guy who is now in some of the biggest franchises in the world, like The Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, and the Expendables, Transporter series, Crank.
Now you know what I do for a living.
But, according to the studio, Ice Cube was a huge draw.
Had he just done Are We There Yet? Or was that later?
No. That was a little later. Just like Ice Cube's best film, Torque, the most realistic motorbike film ever made.
Oh, yeah. Might as well talk about the terrible wailing guitar that seems to pop up all the time.
Yeah, that really cheesy metal guitar really kills the soundtrack for me. Carpenter, who normally scores his own films, returns to the synthesizer for Ghosts of Mars, and a lot of the early ambient stuff is great, but in every action scene there is this ceaseless metal riffage that just sounds really cheap and dates the film. Like Carpenter had been flirting with this kind of thing all the way back into In the Mouth of Madness, where he scored the opening credits with a knockoff Black Album-styled Metallica riff. Interestingly, Carpenter originally wanted Enter Sandman for that title sequence, and nearly all of the action scenes for Ghosts of Mars were shot to Metallica songs as well.
Oh, okay, well there you go.
But he couldn't use the music in the film, so the final score involves Carpenter working with Anthrax, Buckethead, and other metal rock artists. And I guess it's meant to underpin the leather daddy, goth metal mashup aesthetic of the Ghosts, but I can't say for certain. It's honestly like it was all put together by some petulant teenager trying super hard to be cool and alternative to their normal parents.
You'd like to wait till I was dead, wouldn't you? You'd like to see the maggots eat my face.
You are so creative, honey.
Conformist bitch.
Well, seeing as you've got a fresh perspective on this, Chris, being the first time you've seen it, would you recommend this film to anybody else?
Look, only if you're a John Carpenter fan, because I do think it's interesting to see how this film fails in many ways where his other films succeed, even when it's kind of recycling similar elements. But yeah, it's boring more than anything else, which is the biggest crime a film can commit, in my opinion. What about you, Nate?
No, I don't recommend it. Watch any other John Carpenter film. Even watch Village of the Damned. Village of the Damned is boring and slow, but God, at least something's happening in it.
Oh, geez, Village of the Damned. Oh, that's saying something if you're giving that a recommendation over this. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed that video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell. We regularly upload content about B-movies, cult cinema, and other trash video oddities. Until next time, stay safe and stay weird.